here on the Curiosity podcast, the goal is for the audience to start thinking differently. And you have been thinking about humans thinking differently for a long time. And so, just love to, we don't have to unpack everything in this kind of little kind of ending segment, but I think it'd be good to kind of give the audience kind of a teaser on, how you're thinking about curiosity, sustainability, the big challenges that humans are facing on this planet, and to the extent that entrepreneurialism is having an impact on that or whatever that might be. There's a lot of different things that we can sort of dig into, but I'd love to kind of just get your initial thoughts on a few of those things wherever you want to take the conversation. I feel like I've got a couple of notes here to bring forward if we need them, but maybe just kind of get your take on curiosity in general. What does it mean to you? How do you define it?
My big ambition right now is exactly that. It's curiosity. And it's because I believe the moment is now for curiosity to really thrive in society. I think we by design as creatures are always in survival mode. But we live in a society today that is abundant. And so how do we really begin to shift our mindset from survive to thrive? I think also I observe the polarization that's happening in the US, and that also occurs globally. I'm thinking a lot about just the way in which things like the pandemic have isolated us, have siloed us, have created even more polarization in our perspectives and our beliefs. And I just wonder, when is the moment going to arise when we celebrate all kinds of kinds and we unite together as humanity? And that is the role that I believe curiosity can play in society. It does bring us together instead of divide us, because it flips the narrative. The narrative goes from really even just, this is my belief system, to I just want to explore, I want to discover, I want to apply creativity and imagination. I'm going to choose to think differently, challenge the status quo, really just bring a point of view that is the unpoint of view and flips our own mindset. That's what we have to do first. We have to flip our way of thinking from I have a lot of answers to I have a lot of questions, and I want to allow myself the freedom to let curiosity thrive. And so I think it all comes down to, how do we help humanity get our curiosity back? If you look at the data, 0 to 5 years old, we're highly curious creatures. We're always asking why. I remember as a child asking my aunt why so many times about the same point, that eventually she was like, Brad, I just don't know. But where did that go? At some point, I lost that. And so I am on a mission to reinvigorate curiosity within myself. And as creative minds, we tend to get asked our point of view a lot. And so it's also going against my own orthodoxies and thinking, instead of giving answers, to start to just ask questions. Ask why, ask how, and really start to apply that curiosity as I flip my own narrative and hopefully build new neural pathways into the way that I interact with and understand society.
It seems as humans, we're effort averse. We're lazy. We create shortcuts, and our brain and physiology does it for us. It's the least amount of energy possible. And so what we get into these ruts or routines, or we get used to sort of the environment around us in a way, and it seems like in part, sort of as we grow and develop and mature, we just sort of begin to take for granted things around us. And certainly there's other factors. We were chatting a little bit with Neil about sort of the education system and how how that doesn't necessarily produce entrepreneurialism, because you're used to sort of again, that routine and the answers in the back of the book, the things that you can learn academically versus what you learn experientially.
So that's a really good point. Having been a former educator in the K through 12 system, having gone through the K through 12 system, as most people have in the US at least, I talk about the 0 to 5 very intentionally because about 4 to 5 is where we enter into the education system, which was developed for a very different time period. Call it a program developed for, or an experiment developed for the Industrial Revolution to prepare a workforce for a future state that was highly relevant for that time period. It is 2021. Just in the past year, every orthodoxy imaginable has been completely obliterated. And society has shifted and changed just in the past 15 years in ways that we can hardly fathom or imagine. I mean, we go back just 15 years and we look at the emergence of social media and the influence that has had on society, politically, industry, educationally, and every other aspect of our economic infrastructure. That's just one specific thing. I mean, you think about going to a Blockbuster and having that experience of picking out a film, driving there, being there, driving home, to even just a Redbox where I could just go to CVS or Walgreens and pick a movie out, to now streaming content. The shift that has had in our societal makeup and the way that we interact as a species, the way that on-demand presence has shifted our expectations. The examples continue to, I think, perpetuate, and we could talk about many of them. But if you just look at that shift over 15 years and how accelerated that has been, the number of inventions and innovations that have emerged as a result of those platforms existing, it's phenomenal. I mean, technology is truly catching up with our imaginations in ways we never fathomed possible. The role that the education system plays today is fundamentally critical. However, we are still operating within a system that is designed for a very different time period where curiosity was beat out of you and you were not allowed to be curious. We were not taught how to learn.
Don't deviate.
Stay the path, stay the course. Do not ask why. Rote memorization was the goal. But the Bell system was designed very strategically, aligned with the requirements of the Industrial Revolution and a factory worker's role. Everything has changed. That's the only thing that stayed the same. And so our opportunity as a species is just to start to get a little curious. Instead of assuming that everything we believe and know to be true, let's get uncomfortable and be comfortable getting uncomfortable and start to ask questions, explore, and do it authentically because you're just interested in and you're curious enough to want to ask questions. Answers are cheap. We can Google answers. We got all the answers we could ever want. But the power of questions and the power of thinking in a way that allows for curiosity to thrive, like, that's magic.
I think it's going to make kind of the podcast so exciting and everything, the things that you're talking about. There's so many different things to unpack, and we'll get an opportunity to kind of do deep dives into kind of each of these, and we'll have to sort of ensure that we put like at least a few kind of boundary conditions on this, or sort of joking, be here for, 8 hours and who knows, what all we'll sort of push out. But I think it's a really exciting journey that we'll go on. And so certainly we'll, reach out and get, solicit interest from the audience in terms of potential topics or other things as we get kind of digging into it. But I think just the ability to ask questions, like you're saying, is something that we've lost the ability to accomplish. And that has created this divisiveness, this we have an answer, we think we have the answer, and we've really then shut down any sort of intellectual interest in something else that might run countercurrent to the thing that we think is the answer. And it creates so many opportunities to talk about key topics And the goal for the audience is to maybe learn to be a little bit more curious, or to maybe by hearing some of the questions through the guests that we'll have on, and the conversations that we'll have, to think about the world through a little bit of a different lens.
I believe, like, what would be just beautiful is if humanity, even just in the most inkling, subtle ways, started to be a little more curious and more willing and open to celebrate what is so beautiful about who we are and what we are as creatures. Like, even if we just push the boundary 1%, 10%. Of course, my ambition would be like Mars shot, right? Like, completely reinvigorate society and humanity globally to apply curiosity in every fiber of our being and our existence. Obviously, that's my ambition. And I also appreciate that we as human beings are naturally wired a very specific way. And it's really uncomfortable to be curious, because what you're saying is I am comfortable being in the midst of society and being the purple cow. I'm totally cool with that. That's seldom the case. The idea of challenging the status quo is beautiful. The reality of it is a lot of loneliness and isolation and feeling really uncomfortable. And we have to lean into that and believe that to be worth it.
You also have to be willing to say, I don't know. It takes a little bit of humility to sort of step into a situation to say, I've thought about a particular topic in a particular way for many years, or my whole life, or whatever it might be, and to take the time to really be interested in another person's perspective, or looking at it through a different lens, to discover a more robust, colorful, textural kind of outcome. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I think is also the thing that excites me about it, is there's a connection, I think, with just entrepreneurialism in general. I think that sort of
absolutely
in the startup world, you have humans that are generally more curious, generally more willing to take risks and to try new things and to put themselves out there and to iterate. And so I think there's a higher concentration of curious humans in sort of the startup world than you might find in other places. And so I think it'll be fun to, unpack the stories of those that are trying to solve human challenges at, we're talking really, at the big macro level of kind of these broad challenges, but where kind of the rubber meets the road in individual technologies or different things that companies are solving for. And so I think what's cool about the premise and the hypothesis of the podcast is it allows us to sort of have those discussions at the macro level, but then zoom into a particular kind of micro example and dig into that and unpack that.
It also makes me think about, in your first kind of question, like, what is curiosity? And I think that's the question. My hope is that throughout this journey, we discover, why is curiosity relevant, what curiosity is, and how we apply curiosity to advance humanity.
I love it. I'm excited to go on the journey with you, Brad.
I'm stoked.
Onward